And now, it's that time of the week once again. Welcome to the Departure Lounge podcast with your hosts, Tom Whittle and Steve Wooldridge. Your ticket to the home of aviation podcasts. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight.
Well, hello, everybody. A very good evening, everyone, to episode number 38 of the Departure Lounge podcast here on the Departure Lounge YouTube channel. My name is Tom Whittle. I am the naughty reindeer that nobody seems to want to sing about in their songs. Why is that, by the way? I just want to be on the sleigh with my brother Rudolph. You know what I mean? Joining us for this very festive kind of podcast, but also a very interesting podcast, is the co-host slash, we'll talk about it in a minute, is Steve Wooldridge. Steve, a very good evening to you. How in the baubles are you?
Yeah, evening, Tom. Everyone at home watching and catching up later in the week. I didn't quite get the memo, so I've destroyed the tree, broken an ornament just to get two crappy little baubles on my ear to try and be part of this. So I'm sorry for the lack of effort, but I obviously haven't read my emails this week.
That's all right, because we didn't actually send one, so it's all right. Yeah, we didn't actually send one, so it's all right. Excuse me. Also joining us this evening for some festive fun is Santa Claus himself. With his pair of robins, they are robins and not anything else. Ian Hartley. Ian, very good evening to you. How are you?
I'm very well, Tom. Thank you. And you all right?
Yes, very well, thank you. Apart from missing out on the sleigh again this year, but all good otherwise.
Oh, happy days. You as well, Steve. You as well,
Yeah,
Steve Butcher.
I'm all good. It's nice to see you with. I'm not going to say it. It's nice to see you with a pair of robins in front of you there, Ian.
I couldn't catch anything else. I don't think I could catch on my garden, so they'll have to.
Yeah, fair enough.
Wonderful. Excellent. Let's jump into some housekeeping while we're here. So, all throughout the evening, I had a little brain fart then. Throughout the evening, we'll be going through our social medias and going through what you can follow us on if you wish to do so and to keep up to date with all the happenings of the show, of course, and of course not just us or me, but you have Steve's and Ian's, which obviously will be on the screen at some point this evening. Also, I forget now because it's always every week. I always forget the what we're doing here. In the link in the descriptions below, I should say, we have the shop. Link to the shop if you wish to buy some merch to support the channel. You can check it out on there. We're not wearing anything today because it's festive, so we're all good. Other than that, you can check it out below. Also, at the same time, if you wish to become a guest on the show, all you have to do is drop us a message on social medias, which you can find in the descriptions below as well. And as well as, obviously, we've put them up on the screens throughout this evening. But if you just want to say hello to us as well, put anything you like in the chat, and we'll show it on screen throughout the evening. I think that's pretty much it. I should revise what I'm actually talking about, but there you go.
Well, there is ad-lib.
Go on. No, go on.
No, I was just saying it's always better ad-lib. You're never quite sure what's about to happen. It's better that way.
Yeah, it's not a case of. Yeah, for me, it's a case of I always forget because my memory is absolutely shocking. But I kind of want to just throw this one aside to Ian at the moment because I'm getting some vibes at the moment and I'm not entirely sure what they are. Oh no, wait, no, I do know what they are. So I'm going to take me and Ian off screen. That's the vibe I'm getting. Is a Pat Butcher.
They're
Pat Butcher.
Pat Butcher looking. There was someone who epitomizes Christmas and Christmas cheer. It's
Steve, you sound awful.
Yeah, Steve, Steve, you're not sounding great right now.
Something wrong with you? Yeah, that's better.
Okay, Steve's back. Yeah, so we're getting Pat Butcher, Butcher vibes from Steve this evening. So we're doing all right so far. But yes, anyway, like I said, if you have any comments or if you have anything you'd like to say to us, or just tell us a little bit about British Airways that we may not even know, because that is the topic of this evening. Of course, we are looking at the illustrious history of British Airways, how they came to form, and of course, how the emerging airlines became a major powerhouse in the aviation industry. So if you have anything that you'd like to share with us in terms of memories, etc., do get them into the chat and we'll show them on screen. Anyway, we're here for the next 90 odd minutes or so, at least till about 9 o'clock. So let's get going. So British Airways, one of the big powerhouses in the aviation industry. Obviously, a lot of people know them through having merged with two airlines of British European Airways and obviously BOAC. But little did they know that after we had Kat Burton on the show from episode 3, there was more airlines to it. More airlines that sort of merged along with them, such as Cambrian, which were more of a Welsh airline, and North East, which don't really get a mention at all in the merging to become British Airways. Fair to say that the merging of the airlines turned British Airways into a bit of a powerhouse?
Yeah, they're massively synonymous with the aviation industry worldwide, aren't they? Sort of later on when we talk about the fleet and that, they've turned some of the most famous planes into sort of the most iconic aircraft in the skies. So yeah, they really have done it well over the last 102 years, haven't they? They are now. So
absolutely,
to be a global player like that.
Absolutely. And I'm just going to very quickly point this out because I think her ears must have been burning. But Kat Burton says, "Hi, boys." So,
hi, Kat.
Yeah. Long time
pressure's on now, isn't it?
Pressure's big time.
Pressure's
like, oh
on
my
now.
God. Like, yeah, we better get this right. Anyway. But yeah,
is it
so
too late to have a guest on?
Eh?
Is it too late to have a guest on now?
Would that to help you out, is it? But no. So yeah, it's synonymous with, obviously, like I say, you think of like British aviation. It's the first thing you go to with the famous sort of speed mark logo as well, and of course the rich history that they've had. Tell us a little bit about how they sort of started. I know Ian was doing a little bit of research, so yeah, do you want to impress?
Well, yeah, I can start you off if you want to. So
go for it.
Right. So on the 25th of August in I can't go back to 1910, but I'm just going on to straight on to 1919. Sorry. But like on the 25th of August in 1919, Aircraft Transport and Travel Limited, which is ATC, a forerunner company to today's British Airways, launched the first daily international flight. And that was between London and Paris. It carried one passenger, but also carried freight, including newspapers, some Devonshire cream, I don't know why, jam and grouse. And I'm presuming the Flappy Bird's grouse rather than the nice beverage grouse. So
I would say so. I would say so.
Yeah.
So quite interesting to actually hear that's how they sort of start off, as like just carrying the single passenger and bird, not malt whiskey, and everything else. So obviously, thinking from where they started off to sort of what it's like now, it's quite a transition, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And you sort of go back, you sort of forget aviation in those days would have been massively in its sort of early stages. So the fact they were flying to Paris would have been huge. You don't even think of it as much of a trip now. It's what 45 minutes or whatever. But in those sort of that era, it would have been a massive undertaking. And sort of between World War One, World War Two, the economy would have been sort of all over the place still. So the fact that they sort of started up in that era and obviously prospered as the decades went on is a huge testament to their early beginnings.
Definitely. And to kind of, obviously not being under the British Airways name until sort of the merger with, the airlines that we mentioned at the top of the show. Going through different sort of identities and then having that opportunity to then merge all sort of 4 or 5 airlines into what we know British Airways now, obviously was a sign of them wanting to kind of be a big player in the aviation industry.
Yeah, that's it. And they sort of in the 30s they started introducing more sort of luxurious aircraft like the HP-42, and they offered sort of customers a new level of comfort and travel, as well as doing the cargo operations for higher air and that sort of thing. So they sort of mixed passengers and cargo to begin with, and obviously these days you think of them primarily as passenger aircraft, but obviously the Hold's probably still doing a bit of cargo. But you think British Airways, you think passenger, but in those days their business model was very much sort of having them side by side rather than separate entities.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. It's they've been under sort of different names, or there's been different sort of airlines as well. And another one that's very synonymous is Imperial Airways, one that you see quite regularly on sort of the very old, let's say like photos or footage or anything else like that. Starting off with that side of things, and then obviously, like you say, merging into one and becoming sort of British Airways. I know British Airways Limited at the time. Back in the sort of the 30s, as you say, and Imperial Airways then became BOAC. So that was already the start of the merge to kind of, let's say, streamline British Airlines sort of thing. And, the formation of BOAC was another one as well, because I think for us in this country, BOAC, it was kind of, or BOAC is a lot, we'll go with BOAC, is almost like our version of Pan Am, because it was very synonymous with the country, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that's absolutely right. And I've lost. Sorry. Yeah, no, and obviously now we get, well, not now, but we did have the livery as well to sort of commemorate that sort of 100-year history of that, and the BEA. I've been practicing that all day after I got it wrong last week instead.
I was, yeah,
but yeah, that was
going to slaughter you if you got it wrong.
Yeah, no, I've got it written down. It's fine. If I say it tonight, I'll give money to charity. That's but it's interesting that when they first started operating, they were flying mainly to Commonwealth countries. That was sort of where they were operating to. They were basing it on territories that were sort of belonging to Great Britain at the time, and just sort of focusing on those rather than sort of the worldwide travel that we know now. Obviously, they had Paris and that, but they did used to concentrate a lot on the Commonwealth. And the first transatlantic flight I saw took them over 15 and a half hours, and it went obviously America to Ireland. But again, in that era, transatlantic flight was a huge undertaking, and the fact that they did it so early on in their history is quite incredible, really.
I think they were very early in pushing the boundaries, weren't they, of air travel, and I mean, like you say, air travel at this particular moment in time is still really in its infancy, isn't it? And to get these airlines thrown together, especially after the First World War and things like that, and to start pushing them as far as they could do. And like you say, they were flying to. I mean, I think they started setting up routes to places like Canada and South Africa and things like that, didn't they? But to push something over into a transatlantic flight and expect somebody to sit in one of those things for 15 hours is quite an achievement in such a such an early stage of flight anyway, because there weren't much flying going on. And I think, like you were saying, Steve, that they were flying to Commonwealth countries, but I think there was still particularly after the First World War and things like that, there was probably still quite a bit of what's the word I'm looking for? There was still quite nervous and quite cautious of flying to some of these, less friendly countries, let's say.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but
absolutely.
They were pushing the boundaries really early.
It's because it's new territory, isn't it? At the time, it was new territory and stuff, and no one knew what it was going to be like to have this, this airline go the lengths that it did to sort of open up to different sort of, like Steve said, Commonwealth countries to start off with, and then of course then transatlantic as well.
Yeah,
I think sort of the wartime era they were doing a bit as well, weren't they? Getting troops around the world to where they needed to be as well. So they were sort of doing a bit of wartime operation to sort of help with the efforts of getting soldiers where they needed to be a bit quicker and repatriating as well, and that. So they obviously sort of had that wartime effort, which sort of goes unnoticed a little bit before you sort of read up on it a little bit.
Yeah. It's probably the fact that they were pushing the boundaries and doing such a good job of it as well, that we're in 1924, weren't it? Imperial Airways were formed, and it was a government's chosen, choice of travel. And they started flying from London to all European destinations, and pioneering routes to Africa and the Middle East and India as well. So I think once the government had got sort of involved in it, I think it was never going to go backwards, were it, after the government had got involved, because I think that's what happens when you start getting a national flag carrier like British Airways. I think from that particular moment on, it was sort of going to be set in stone that this Imperial Airways back in 1924 was going to evolve into the massive company what it is today, and I think that was the start of it, weren't it?
And also then, compared to now, if you wanted to go to New York or whatever, you've got a handful of choices. You could fly with Delta, United, Virgin, whoever, like Aer Lingus, whoever you fancied. But over that era, if you were in Britain and you wanted to get to America or South Africa or wherever, sort of British Airways and what it was previously was sort of your option, wasn't it? There wasn't any such thing as competitive market. Yeah. So
we were saying just then, it's kind of unexplored territory at the time. So because of that, it's you're not going to have a lot of because a lot of people were like it's going to take this long to get across the Atlantic and things like that. So they weren't really trying to compete at the time. But then once it became once it was done in a more, let's say at the time, efficient way, with the introduction of say your jet airliners and things like that, 707s, DC-8s, etc. That's sort of when the competitiveness then came into it as well. So
well, there were no mass travel, were there? There weren't thousands of people stood in Terminal 4 or Terminal 5 or whatever at Heathrow Airport, were they, trying to get abroad? So the market wasn't really there, were it, for mass travel back then either.
Yeah, Steve has disappeared very quickly, but we'll bring him back as soon as he's here. But yeah, so I mean, we'll skip right ahead from obviously the history. There's so many airlines that you could talk about that merged to become British Airways, but we'll go to the actual merging of the airlines we mentioned at the top of the show. So of course we had British European Airways and BOAC, which were the sort of the two major British airlines at the time, and of course the regional airlines of Cambrian that were based at Cardiff and Northeast, which were based in Newcastle, which of course led to the merge and the beginning of British Airways. Obviously, at the time, BOAC operating the likes of the 747 as well to kind of really stamp their mark on the aviation industry. Of course, going over to British Airways as well, which created some very interesting hybrid liveries. Have you seen them?
I can't say. I probably have them in passing, but I can't say. I have to be quite honest with you.
So
On the 747s.
Yeah. So a quick
Okay, right.
So a quick sort of search will show you sort of the BOAC outline of the old livery, and then just the titles that say British Airways on them. Just like the transitioning, transitioning over from BOAC to. I'm just seeing if I can find an image of it because I did see one earlier, but I can't see one now. But yeah, so it's like the BOAC livery, just with sort of the beginnings of British Airways stamped across it. So
Yeah,
it's quite a nice little, nice little sort of hybrid, really. But the BOAC livery itself, as we know, which came back with the 747 a couple of years ago before retirement. Now I think the current BOAC 747 is at St Athan, I think, in Wales. So there are, that livery itself is quite iconic, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it always has been. I mean, I have a Boac pin badge on one of my tracksuit tops, to be quite honest, what I wear. So I think BOAC is just synonymous. It's just sort of it's the forerunner what everybody knows to British Airways, isn't it? That and BAE, and that's probably why they chose them two liveries. Obviously with the Landor as well. For the retro liveries, what they brought out a few years ago. But you ask anybody, I think, who knows anything about aircraft, what was the predecessor to British Airways, and they'll always say BOAC. And the livery is absolutely iconic. It really, really is, and it's still. I can't lie that it gives me retro Cathay Pacific vibes. I'll be quite honest with you, and it always has done. But it's just one of the most iconic liveries I think what has ever been. And it's just unmistakable, and it's just recognised all over the world, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Where did the BOAC 747 end up? Do you know?
Down at St Athan in Wales.
Oh, is that where it is?
I believe it's still there. I don't think it's moved. I'm fairly certain it hasn't, but just for what we were talking about purposes. So this is one of the hybrids.
All right, yeah, I can see now. Yeah, I mean, that's fantastic. It's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, it still keeps
really smart looking. Yeah,
isn't it nice? That it really is nice.
Still shows everything that you need to see.
Yeah.
And then if I just there's another really interesting one which I've sort of just found, which I can't see if I just bring it up on the screen. Bear with me 2 seconds. It's inbound in 3, 2, 1. So there's the other one.
It's not as nice as first one, but it's still nice, isn't it?
It's a right combination, isn't it? It's a proper combination of hybrid liveries.
Yeah. Why does it just say British on it?
Because that's what the Negus livery had, was just British, as opposed to British Airways to start off with.
Yeah.
And then obviously the Airways came into it sort of further on down the line. But to confirm with us, Cat Burton says, yep, it's down at St Athan with E Cube.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, even though I was going to say those two you've just put up though were still so smart. I don't think I ever saw the retro ones flying, which is a real disappointment. But they're beautiful, aren't they? Like those old school aircraft there.
Definitely, and it's one of those, it's one of those liveries where at the time you wish you'd seen sort of this kind of combination of the Negus tail with BOAC sort of cheat line stuff. We're almost getting the best of both worlds, as opposed to waiting on one or the other. When obviously the 747 is still flying with the retro sort of the retro liveries and stuff to celebrate the 100 years. So it's quite a nice little nice little throwback really to some people that would have actually seen this at the time.
I mean, how far back are we going with that picture? Would you say early 80s?
I want to say 80s, early. I got very early because
very early 80s.
Yeah, I think at that point the Negus livery was then starting to come into its own.
Yeah.
That was like the brand new livery. So it's very. I know, obviously, British Airways, when they took delivery of the 757, it went into Negus liveries, and that was like early 80s. So I think the Negus livery was, like I say, early 80s. If he's gone again, so that's fine. Cat Burton giving us some info there, saying it's the US's fault that British Airways went to just British, as that's what the Americans tend to call us. As with American, United, Delta, they always drop the airlines, so we dropped Airways.
Oh, that's an interesting fact, isn't it?
Yeah, so pretty cool. And thank you for that, by the way. Keep hitting us with some facts, because we're not going to know a lot. And obviously, Kat flew with British Airways, so she'll know a lot more than what we will about them. So thank you to you. Rob Brown plane spotting as well, saying, "Evening, chaps. Hope all is well at your end."
Evening, Rob.
And then Steve popping in saying his computer turns off regularly, so he's just going to be in the comments. So it's just us this evening.
Okay.
Which means pressure's on you not to disappear and leave me to it.
Well, it pressure's on now because I didn't do as much revising as what Steve did. To be honest.
Fantastic. So, so let's sort of move away from that. So, we'll move on sort of from it. And sort of talk a little bit more about the whole the merger side of it. So it was quite a big deal at the time. Obviously, British Airways would have inherited a lot of planes that they would have chosen and things like that, and got rid of ones that they didn't want. Obviously, the likes of the BAC 111, which I think, Kat will probably correct me, but I'm pretty sure they came from Cambrian to go into the British Airways fleet, as well as sort of other aircraft as well. So it was quite a big sort of statement to say this is going to be Britain's airline.
Yeah, I think it were probably. I mean, I wouldn't know to be 100%, but I would probably say we're probably a lot of it were government backed as well. So I don't think funding or anything like that was ever going to be an issue. And I mean they took the airlines over, so they take the fleets with them as well, don't they? So and I think British Airways as well. And there wasn't the same. There weren't the same markets as what there were now. There weren't as many players, if you will, were there back then as well. So I think transatlantic flying, people wanted to go on holidays now and things like that were becoming more affordable and things like that. And I think at this particular point where they did all merge together, I think it was sort of the sort of golden age where everything was just falling into place for holiday makers and this and that and the other, where flying became a lot more affordable, and these aircraft manufacturers were getting more automotive with automatic with the production as well, so they could turn planes out a little bit quicker as well and things like that, probably driving the cost of the actual units down as well. So I would imagine that at this particular moment in time where they did merge, it was probably the right time to do it, just because it just sort of fell into the right place, I think, at the right time. That's what I tend to think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple more comments as they keep coming in. Rob Brown, Planespoint, says that BA's TV ads of the 80s and 90s were brilliant. Aria on Air by Malcolm McLaren theme. I don't remember those because I wasn't around then. Doesn't ring a bell to you, does it?
I can't think of any. You see, I can remember Caledonian TV adverts. And it's funny because when somebody mentions an aircraft advert to me, the only one I can think of was Leonard Rossiter splashing with John Collins splashing a drink. But that was a martini advert, and that was on an aircraft as well. And that's funny because I can't actually remember any other aircraft adverts. I remember
It's a
the
little bit
Caledonian
different.
girls.
A little bit different, but we'll go with it.
Yeah.
Steve popping up in the comments saying in the 1950s, BOAC started operating comets, giving them a chance to access more of the world quicker, which is very true. We'll touch on that very, very shortly before we sort of carry on with post-merger, just to talk about that very quickly and why the comet actually came into service. And of course, Cat Burton giving us some more info about the BAC 111s. The 400s came from Cambrian, but the so-called Super 111 500s were XBEA and the staple of the Berlin corridor routes. So interesting as always. I knew they would. Some of them came from Cambrian, but I couldn't remember which
She
sort of
flew
type.
them, didn't she? Did she not fly the BA 111s? I think she did,
Yes,
didn't she? Yeah.
Check out episode 3 if you'd like to find out. Cheeky little plug.
Yeah.
But let's go with what Steve said just very briefly as to the 1950s as well. Like BOAC, we'll just go back before the merger, just very quickly before we carry on. Obviously, BOAC were one of the, if not the launch customer for the Comet 1, which came out, which was Britain's first, or I think the world's first jetliner, I think. I know it was Britain's first. I think it was the world's. I'm sure of it. I did watch a video on it.
It was the world's first pure jet service.
Pure jet service, yeah. So it's the world's first sort of pure jet airliner. And obviously it had its issues as well. And by the time that the Comet 4 came out, that's, years later, the 707 and DC-8 were already ruling the world at the time. Hence why the Comet really didn't sort of take off at the time. I think the Comet 4 was a little bit more successful than the Comet 1 because the Comet 1 had a lot of breakup issues as well. But the Comet 4, I think, came out far too late for the time. I think they operated until 1971, I think, with various airlines. But I can't think for BOAC. Probably, I think 1969, something like that. And obviously they went out of service, and then most of them got converted / built into Nimrods. So there we go.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, they had problems with the windows, didn't they? The cabin windows being square, didn't they?
Yes, there's a lot of pressure, something to do with pressurization.
Pressure problems, weren't it? And I think it was something to do with windows popping, weren't it?
And windows popping caused the planes break up. A couple of the Comet 1s to break up at the time, which led to the grounding of them. Nice little throwback there, the little comets and stuff. And I know most about it because of the videos that I've seen. So we'll go with that. So British Airways, of course, also throwing their hat into the ring and trying to be a huge sort of player in the aviation industry. Of course, being one of 2 airlines and the only British airline to operate Concorde, which obviously was a massive step in the right direction for them at the time. Of course, the other one being Air France, of course, for the fact that the French also partly built it. So British Airways with Concorde and offering this exclusive way of traveling a lot faster to New York and things like that. Again, like I said, throwing their hat into the ring to go, we are the ones you want to fly with.
Absolutely, yeah. They were pioneers, weren't they? I mean, to go ahead with the Concorde project, I know it was fraught with problems, weren't it? There were plenty of problems along the way, and it's such a shame that it was only taken by the French and the English, and that's because they built it between them, didn't they? I think the main issue with not selling it around the world was just the noise issue, weren't it? Just the supersonic booms and things like that, weren't it? That was the issue, weren't it? And it was causing a lot of problems, weren't it? And it's such a shame. I understand why they couldn't fly it over populated areas at such speeds. I get that, but it's such a shame. It really, really is, because it could have been it could have changed the face of aviation if that plane was able to do what it set out to do. It certainly would have changed the face of aviation as we know it today. But I think
there's a lot there's a lot you can actually mention about Concorde, which I'm sure we will at some point. There's a lot you can actually mention about it, and it is it is fascinating in itself. But it's a pioneer basically to get sort of the higher class passengers, shall we say, like celebrities and that, flying with British Airways and nobody else.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, and it worked, didn't it? And I think Steve touched on it the other week where he said you could organise a business meeting, fly to New York, have your business meeting, and still be on for 6 o'clock news in the evening. And there's no other airline never has been. I don't think ever will, unless United come up with this whatever they're calling it. I forget what they call it now. Unless somebody else comes up with something like that, they'll never be able to touch on anything like that again. To be quite honest, never.
No, definitely not. No. It opened up something completely different for British Airways at the time as well. It's a shame, like you say, like nobody else went for it because of various different reasons, basically, which, like I said, we'll touch upon maybe on a later episode. But I say it kind of gave British Airways that almost like that, as we know now, that royal feeling of like, proud to be British and we are. We are doing, we're doing things that are completely different to every other airline sort of thing. So that's why we're going to try and make it look like we are the ones that you have to fly with. And to their credit, like to run Concorde all the way through until 2003 for the obvious reasons of the groundings, and then the price of actually flying the thing is a testament to just how, let's say, privileged, but at the same time how much of a staple it was in the fleet of British Airways.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, how many were they have? Were there 5 altogether? British Airways, I think there were, weren't there?
I want to say 7. I think.
Were there 7 in British Airways fleet?
Yeah, I'm
there's
sure
a question. Yeah, I think I might stump you with that one, but
I'm fairly certain there was 7. But somebody will correct me if I'm wrong. I'm fairly certain there's 7.
Yeah, and like you say, it became normal, didn't it? I mean, I only ever saw Concorde once flying over here, and that was part of an air show years and years ago, and that was the only opportunity I got to see. But yourself, Tom, living down in London, you would have seen it. You're an aviation enthusiast, so it would have turned your head every time you heard it, sort of thing. But I think flying over to the normal person, it was just like the 747 flying over, and it came part of normal life, didn't it? It was just a normal thing seeing Concorde flying over London and taking off and landing and things like that. And it was, and I think it was that premium. It was a premium product what they were offering, and I still think to this day, when you're looking at flights and things like that, I still think, I mean, I do personally look at BA as a premium product, and I think it always has been and always will be, and I think it'll always be up there with the best of them. Yeah, you can fly. You can fly pretty much anywhere in the world with any airline you want these days, whether it's flying via another country or whatever. But you look at BA, and it's always a little bit pricier than every other product. But it always seems like the premium, the creme de la creme of British aviation. It always has been. I think it always will be as well.
I think so. Cat Burton just confirming that BA did have 7.
Yeah, 7.
That was correct. And of course 5, so 12 in total.
So there were 12 made altogether.
Yeah. Rob Brown Plane Spotting says, useless fact, BA also got a placement in Bond film Moonraker. In the Rio scene, Bond fights with a goon who falls off an ambulance and ends up going headfirst through a BA billboard.
That is a bit of useless information, isn't it?
I don't know, but but yeah, that's pretty cool. Steve Plains, or Steve not here. Concorde was only 2 years after the merger of BOAC and BEA. Rob Brown Plane Spotting also asking, did the Queen not sit in seat 1A on Concorde? Don't know. Don't know. Someone will have to confirm that. And then Steve also again saying that he thinks Concorde and 747s are what he pictures when he thinks of British Airways. Now, of course, we'll talk about the 747s. Pretty much the flagship of British Airways for lots of different services across the pond, New York and America, South America at the time, Middle East, Asia, Australia, when they were sort of in their peak sort of thing. And of course, for a long, long time, while airlines were getting rid of theirs, especially over the last sort of 5-10 years, British Airways were sticking with them and flying them strong. And of course, up until obviously recently when they had to retire them due to obviously the pandemic and stuff, had about 30 odd 747s into being the world's largest 747 operator at the time. So it just shows you just how much faith British Airways has in their aircraft, and of course they've replaced them now with the A350s and 787 Dreamliners and stuff. So I imagine that they'll be now the new flagships, and hopefully they'll sort of fill the void left by the 747s, which obviously a lot of spotters in the UK or people that are associated with British Airways obviously miss the 747 purely for the fact that it is such an iconic plane.
Absolutely, yeah. Like you said, they've flown them from day one, haven't they, British Airways, and they've had a massive fleet of 747s, and I think while a lot of these other companies, I mean, you can just take someone like Emirates, for instance. As soon as an opportunity like a 380 came along, they were all over it. Other companies with 787s and things like that, but British Airways stuck to what they knew. They had this massive fleet of 747s, and they never had to do anything, did they? They did the job of what any other aircraft can do reliably, and they were proper good, solid workhorses. So they never really needed to jump on the bandwagon of getting these new modern jets, I suppose, until, like you say, more recently, where I suppose in a lot of ways, I think climate change and things like that, I think companies have been forced to as well, haven't they? And they're doing it morally rather than they're sort of biting the tongue having to do it, I suppose, but they have to do it because it's the right thing to do. And I think British Airways would have been quite happy sticking with the 747 fleet, to be quite honest.
Absolutely. I think they weren't to go for another couple of years. Yeah. Weren't due to go for another couple of years. So we should still really be enjoying the the privilege of witnessing the 747s. But unfortunately that's the way that the world has worked, and it is what it is. But pretty much a staple in the fleet again, like having their first ones delivered in 1989 and pretty much becoming the heart and soul of everything that British Airways basically did for their long haul services.
But you're still talking about the 747s. Sorry, I thought you were moving on to something different then. Yeah.
No, still talking about
proper amateur honour. Yeah, it was a staple for everything, weren't it? What British Airways did, but then 380s did start to come along then, and there were alternatives, weren't there, to long haul flights? There were obviously 787s, and then your 380s came along as well, and even now with 350s, and I think, I don't know whether they've started just recently flying the 380s again, so they're not shy, they're not scared of still using these big 4-engine jets, are they? So it's like fuel isn't a real problem for them, but obviously with the retirement of the 747s, they have to be replaced by something, and the 350 and the 787 is the only way to go, really, with replacing something like that, isn't it?
Yeah. Like I said, they replaced them with the 350s and stuff, which are getting rave reviews at the moment, and 787s as well. So yeah, it's as much as it's sad, I think they're still being they're replaced by fairly capable aircraft as well, no matter how much we sort of strive to have the 747s back. But we'll sort of press ahead a little bit more with a topic that we covered in a separate podcast. I think it was episode 11, which was one of British Airways' controversies back in the late 90s, so about 1998 to about 2002, which of course was the British Airways World Tales. Now, like I said, we very briefly, we've spent an entire
3.5 hours, that one, I think, weren't it?
3.5 hours, nearly 4 hours talking about the World Tales.
Yeah, it was longer than better, weren't it?
Yeah, 4 hours, roughly 4 hours. So if you want to go and have a look at what we think about the Tales, go check that out after this. If you've got 4 hours to spare, why not?
Yeah.
But controversial at the time, the World Tales, because obviously, there was a lot of opinions going around, or a lot of opinions going around that they just were not. It was taking the identity, wasn't it? Taking the identity away of British Airways, an airline that had gone from BOAC and BEA to British Airways, or British at the time,
Yeah.
building up a reputation, going into of course the iconic Landor livery, which everyone sort of knew and found it to be proper. You were going on an airline like a proper airline if you were flying with
Yeah.
British Airways at the time, because of how everyone says that a livery don't matter too much, but it kind of did back then. Whereas
Yeah, of course it did. I think. I mean, we looked into it, didn't we? And I think, I mean, from a spotter's point of view, you can stand in Horse Paddock or on Myrtle Avenue, and you can watch these special liveries come in and go out and things like that, and you can look at them and think, well, that's ugly, that's nice, that's ugly, that's nice. But when you look into the actual background of the livery and the why they've chose that particular livery, and it wasn't more of they chose it for whatever reason. I think they chose it to celebrate the actual places where British Airways were massive in some of these countries, in your Australias, your South Africas, and even your local liver as well, because there were some English ones as well amongst them as well, which were the smaller regional jets wore them, didn't they? A lot of these liveries, and I think it was more of a celebration. And I think if people spent a little bit more time looking into the reasons why they actually chose all these specific liveries, I think they'd understand a little bit more, and I think they'd appreciate them a little bit more instead of just looking at them. I mean, I know I looked at some and I didn't like them, and I might have slagged them off and things like that, but they were there because they were celebrating the countries where British Airways have become a massive part of that specific, travel network into those specific places. And I think, like I say, I think if people looked into the history of it a little bit more and understood why they chose the liveries, what they did do, and for the reasons why they did it, I think people would look at them through different eyes, sort of thing, and they weren't all bad.
No. So like I said, we spent an entire episode doing it back along now. So check it out if you've got 4 hours to spare. But the idea behind it was to have painters or designers or something create a design that would represent the country, and the countries that they were representing were all part of BA's route network, to just celebrate that sort of thing. Like I say, some were good, some were great, some were not so great. Steve pointing out that Maggie Thatcher was not a fan. She was not a fan at all because of a press conference that happened with, I think, a 747 that was in like a Botswana livery. She put a paper towel, or she put like a towel over the tail, and said that it was taking away British Airways' identity. So it was very controversial. The project, I think Project Utopia is what it's called, that only lasted until 2002. The last planes weren't painted out of the World Tails until about 2006, 2007, I think. And they were small sort of Dash 8s that were based at Manchester. I think they had two. I think one was in Irish livery and one was in, I want to say, Scotland, maybe, kind of thing. So, so that obviously British Airways had its controversies with that as well. So definitely worth having a look at that if you want to have a look at what we thought about all the tails and stuff. If you have hours to spend.
And they actually kept one as well, didn't they? Which is what they use now, isn't it?
It's the one that they use now, which was specifically designed for Concorde. Yes.
Yeah.
I still hate it.
I mean, when you look at some of the classic liveries, what BA have had back in, with the Landor and the Negus livery and things like that, and you look at what they've got now, and it's not very nice, is it? It's not ugly, don't get me wrong, but it's not iconic, is it? Like it was.
Chelsea Rose all the way.
No. I forgot which one it was. It was the one from I think the artist from Devon painted it. I think, didn't he? With the stripes going across the tail. Yeah. I forgot what it's called now, but yeah.
And it was on one plane, and I can't imagine why.
I like it. It's like someone throwing ice cream on it or something, hasn't it?
Yeah.
If I remember right.
Just throw some Devonshire cream on it or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so obviously as well, I mean, from what I can remember in terms of controversies, there was planned talks. This is just very brief. Planned talks between British Airways and American for some kind of, I think not a merger, but some sort of, I can't, it's like a code share. I'm certain it's something that two airlines talk about. It made the news, and airlines like Virgin Atlantic were painting their planes with no A, BA, AA, which was to say shut this down right now sort of thing.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's what it would have led to. I think obviously people like Virgin doing transatlantic flights and things like that, I think they just would have been pushed out of market, wouldn't they? And I think it would have. Yeah. I mean, it's the kind of economy we live in these days, where it's dog eat dog, and I think there's got to come a point where you've got to pull back the reins a little, bit, and these markets need to be open. Otherwise, if people like US Airlines and American or whatever and BA just dominate these specific routes, they're just going to absolutely milk it, aren't they, and cane it for what it's worth.
Yeah. So there's quite a few controversies, and I think the other controversy, which we'll get onto now, was the merger of British Airways and Iberia, which of course in 2011. I will just confirm this on my notes. 2011, right at the start, January 2011, where this then created what we know now as the International Airlines Group, which several airlines are part of. This merger between the two, but that formed International Airlines Group, came without its kind of. I'm just trying to think of a certain way of putting it. So it was basically 2010 September. Willie Walsh, who was now the CEO of IAG, announced that it was going to consider acquiring other airlines and sort of creating this group. Of course, which also led to the disappearance of British Midland. As well. That led to that. There was other airlines like Lufthansa were expected to be part of that group as well, which didn't happen. And it's almost like trying to form their own, mini alliance sort of thing.
I think that's where they were trying to head it, weren't they? I think they were trying to do what Swiss Air tried to do, where they just tried to become really big, really quick back in whenever it was, and they just tried swallowing everybody up. I think British Airways was sort of heading down that road, but I don't think it's really come off for them, has it?
No. So because of the merging of British Airways and Iberia, this also led to, of course, Speedbird 001 coming back into service with the A318s.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the only positive I think that came out of that, really, was the fact that allowed an all business style travel to America, albeit not as quick. And obviously you had to land in Shannon in Ireland to get pre-departure clearance from customs from America, but that would then sadly sort of disappear. It would sadly disappear after sort of a few years, probably like a few years.
I think it was early. I don't know. Wasn't it early this year the last one flew? Where it
early last?
When did Jeb Brooks? It was early this year because Jeb Brooks wrong about it, weren't he?
Yeah. See, this year or last year, one of the two.
Yeah.
One of the two, I think. But it's quite a interesting sort of last decade or so for British Airways. Of course, they also became the official airline partner for the 2012 Olympics.
Yeah.
And of course, that also saw the Olympic flame flown from Athens to quite a rare site down here, and especially in the southwest, to Culdrose. So British Airways plane flew into Culdrose to drop off the flame for it to do its tour of course, the UK.
Yeah.
As well, of course, British Airways painted up a few planes as well. In the sort of, I'll say iconic. It's not really iconic because I don't think it was that great. Like the Dove livery that you and I saw when we went to Manchester that time.
Yeah, I do like that livery, to be honest. It's one of my favourites on Flight Sim.
Yeah,
even though it's on a 320 on Flight Sim, but
it's not too bad. But
They had another one as well, didn't they?
it was like it's like a yellow sort of front,
Yeah.
I think, unless I'm thinking differently.
Yeah,
yellow
I can
front
sort of
to it.
vaguely see. I'm just thinking of the tail. It had like a really dark yellowy orangey tail, I think, didn't it? Like a
I
quite
think
deep
so.
yellow
I can't
tail.
think of
Yeah.
it off the top of my head. But
Mm.
yeah, so there was that. There was that as well. There is something I do want to talk about, which I post regularly about on Instagram when I'm putting pictures up. Is back in 2010. I think it was, I can't remember the month, but 2010 was quite a noticeable year for British Airways because there was a massive strike, and I mean a massive strike of staff and everything, to the point where such a established airline like British Airways had to draft aircraft in from different countries or different airlines, for example, to lease them to actually conduct the flights. This would then obviously be repeated later on, which is why there was a load of Qatar 320s that went into Heathrow to basically do their flights. But this was a large sort of scale strike back in 2010, where the likes of we would see for the first time, for anybody that spotted at the time, I know I did because I've got some pictures, but it'd be the first time we'd see the likes of Transavia from Holland, Jet2, Titan. Trying to think, there was an airline called Viking, which was from Sweden, I think, and some others as well, like Astreas, which were a British leisure airline, which are now no longer around. Coming into Heathrow, which was very unlike, at the time, to sort of see a holiday package airline come into such a busy airport to do these British Airways flights. Lasted about 3, 4, 5 days, something like that. So it was a real short window, but one that a lot of people remember because of the fact that you got to see all these planes that you wouldn't normally see and haven't. Well, apart from obviously the pandemic and stuff, and you see the likes of TUI going into Heathrow for cargo reasons, you haven't seen them back there since.
No.
So it's quite a little interesting sort of thing, and that'll always stick with me as well. It was one of the sort of reasons why you went to Heathrow for like 3-4 days in a row, was to catch all these planes that you were not going to see at Heathrow again, such as Jet2, which is still weird to see.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. And I remember the more recent one. That's where they had all the Qatar, didn't they? I think it was the pilot strike, weren't it? Where they had all the Qatar planes taking over. Yeah. There were plenty of them coming in, weren't they? Taking over BA Air flights. Yeah, they seem to stick in my mind.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was like not as, I don't want to say glamorous because no strike is glamorous, but it wasn't as for spotters. Wasn't you were getting one type.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
One type of aircraft where the one in 2010 you were getting like Jet2 757s, 737s, Transavia 737s, Titan 767s, 757s. There's so many. There's so many that I stick to my mind that came in over that sort of period of time. But going on to sort of recent, sort of the last five years or so, as we mentioned, British Airways stopped their Speedbird 001 services with the A318s. They obviously retired the 747s and replaced them, as we said, with the A350s, and they got the 777-9 on order as well. So there'll be that going into the fleet as well to possibly replace the older 777s that are going to be slowly leaving the fleet. You got also celebrating their 100th birthday as well. So obviously painting 4 aircraft in the iconic liveries of Negus, BOAC, Landor, and BEA liveries to kind of go back on their heritage. I'd like to have seen more, because it's not just those airlines that merged that allowed this to happen, but I think they've gone with ones that are well known for.
Yeah, they've gone for the ones what people recognise, haven't they?
Yeah. So they've gone for that sort of thing. I'd like to have seen the likes of Cambrian would have been a really good one to see sort of come back. I've seen photos of the livery. It's quite nice. Imperial would have been a really good one as well. That would have been a really nice one to have seen, Imperial Airways, because that's kind of where the origins came from.
Absolutely. I mean,
quite nice
you can go on and go on though, can't you?
There's so many you can so many you can choose than that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so they celebrated their 100th birthday with obviously the painting up of those. On a quick note, I have seen that the BEA A319 is due to be stored at Gatwick from tonight, I believe. So it's gone up to Glasgow, or its last departure is to like in literally 20 minutes, I believe. But there's a lot of rumor going around that it's getting retired, it's going into long-term storage. But yeah, for a while anyway, the BEA A319 is going into sort of, let's say, temporary storage until sort of further notice. It could be to do with current events. It could be anything. The aircraft is 21 years old.
Do
So
you not think that the 319 is slowly being phased out anyway?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe so. If we're going to look at the fleet of British Airways now, they are phasing out the 319s. I believe they are supposed to be going.
Yeah.
And I believe they're also getting rid of the 321s as well, because they haven't come back into service.
Okay, right. That's
Since sort of
interesting.
going back into storage, and rumours are that they will not come back at all, because there's no point if you've got the 321 Neos.
Yeah, true.
And of course, the 320 will have do the 319 job anyway. You look at like flight radar and stuff, and you have a look at the flights that the 319 would normally do. You often see a 320 on it anyway, like to Germany, up to Glasgow, Belfast, etc. You see 320s or 321s on those routes. So 319 slowly getting phased out. 321s, I think, are probably done. I think.
Yeah.
Standard ones, I think they are probably done. Which is a bit of a shame because I quite like them. But
yeah,
I prefer them to the 319s anyway. But they are, as far as I'm aware, they are done.
Yeah, I think it's all about being carbon neutral and things like that now, isn't it? So, like you say, they're moving into you get a 320 Neo or a 321 Neo, and you've got more bums on seats, and you've got a cheaper plane to fly as well, haven't you? Essentially, I think. And I think that's what it is. What do you think about BA's sort of switching and getting rid of get me cat trying to drink my water. Sort of moving away from like Boeing altogether and moving more to a full Airbus fleet. What do you think? Do you think that'd ever be a possibility?
I think it'll be basically whatever's efficient for them.
Yeah.
So they're not entirely moving away from Boeing because, like I said, they've got the 777-9.
Yeah.
The new sort of variant of the 777 on order.
Yeah.
So they'll be in the fleet. The 350s, they'll probably order some more of those. Maybe even order the shorter version just to kind of even things out a little bit. If the 777-9 doesn't work out for them or something.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah.
So I think in terms of short haul, 100%, they're going for the 320, 321s.
Yeah.
The Neos, of course. I think they'll be the long-term mark for short haul and medium haul.
It seems to be that way, doesn't it? Yeah.
Because they've got a huge range on them. It also wouldn't surprise me later on down the line to see like Aer Lingus doing Manchester to let's say like New York, or like Dublin to New York and Dublin to Boston and things like that. That British Airways don't go. We quite fancy some of that. If it works for them, it can work for us, and offer a smaller plane to go onto these transatlantic routes, sort of thing. Wouldn't surprise me at all. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
They could expand their transatlantic sort of portfolio.
I think so. Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if like 5 years' time or something, when I think at the moment there was news during the week that the A321 XLR, which is the extra long range version, is being put together for its test flight as well. It wouldn't surprise me if that's the route they go down and send it to Canada or something along those lines, or if they do that sort of thing.
Right.
So it wouldn't surprise me. I think they're very happy with the Neos at the moment, and they will probably jump down the route, possibly not straight away, but within the next, 5 years or so, maybe.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's what I think anyway. I think if Aer Lingus are doing it, you got your favourite TAP Portugal doing it.
Absolutely, yeah, I love them. Yeah,
send it, get a Christmas card from them. Have to make sure of that.
Yeah, definitely.
But they're sending their 321s from Lisbon to New York, which is about a couple hours, probably a couple hours extra, maybe.
Yeah, so
same
they've got the range, haven't they?
and they've got the range to do it. So would surprise me if, for efficiency reasons, British Airways will go down the same route and offer it out to, for cheaper flights sort of thing, as opposed to trying to get a flight on a 777 that's going to cost 400 quid.
Fortunes, absolutely, yeah, it'd be an expensive flight, wouldn't it?
Flight across for maybe half that, maybe a little bit more.
Definitely,
so that's what I think anyway.
Yeah, it makes economic sense, I think, in long run, doesn't it?
I think so. I think if they see other airlines doing it, they'll go ahead and do it themselves.
Yeah.
So
what about Iberia then, being part of the same group then? Because they tend to be an Airbus fleet, don't they?
So Iberia themselves, obviously, there's quite a few airlines as part of the this group. Aer Lingus, for example, are one of them.
Right.
And fun fact, Aer Lingus had the 350 on order. Lots of people excited about it. And IAG went, nope, we'll give those to Iberia instead. So that's what's happened. So they've ordered the aircraft. They have to then designate where it goes to. And it was supposed to go to Aer Lingus for a long, long time. And then...
it was rumoured that it was going to be the Aer Lingus 350 flying out of Manchester, weren't it? But it ended up being a 330, didn't it?
Supposedly, I think. Yeah, that's what the plan was. But because IAG went, no, we'll give the 350s to Iberia and sort of just do what we're doing now and that. So IAG are IAG. Like not many people like them because of the fact that one, they recreate boring liveries, and to think was it's all about everything else as opposed to trying to market your airline, sort of thing. And I mean, Aer Lingus is an interesting one. Not one for this podcast, but it's an interesting one because they don't, apart from like the 321 Neos going across the pond and things like that, there's really anything in place for the future at this point. You don't hear about planes that have been ordered and they're waiting for them to come in, sort of thing. So it's an interesting one, which I think we'll probably save for another show. But yeah, British Airways, I think 5 years' time they'll do the same as what Iberia are doing, and they'll unlike not Iberia, Aer Lingus and TAP and I'm trying to think of any like Air Transat as well. Back before the whole pandemic sort of thing, they sent their 321 Neos to Manchester. So it can be done, and I think at some point they'll go down that route as well. So I would like to think that would be the case, but it's one to keep an eye out on.
Absolutely, it's quite an interesting future what's in front when you think about it, isn't it? About what is going to happen to the likes of. I mean, unfortunately, what you were just saying then about Aer Lingus, for instance, you can see the airline fizzling out, can't you? To be fair, and British Airways just taking all the routes. If it's a business decision from IAG.
I wouldn't have thought so, just purely because Ireland isn't in Britain. So they have to keep their own. They have to keep.
They have to keep their own flag carrier, won't they?
Massively, I think what they would end up doing is massively restructure it.
Yeah.
I think.
There's that. Yeah.
Don't know because there's there's not much sort of research into it, and we don't really want to be speculating what's going to be happening.
No, we're not really privy to what goes on there, are we? So you can't really speculate, can you?
Yeah. So I'd like to kind of think that there's a plan in place for them. I don't see them fizzling out at all, but I actually think there's a plan in place for them, especially. But yeah, going back to British Airways and stuff, it'd be interesting to see how the 777-9 fits in and where that will go. Like I said, not many airlines have ordered it because I don't think there's really. A lot of people think there's not a need for it. Like you speak to a lot of like spotters or aviation fans and that, and they'll say to you there's not really a massive need for it, which is why not a lot of airlines have ordered it. The airlines that have ordered it have older 777-300s that are like 10, 12 years old already.
Yeah.
So the likes of Emirates, All Nippon, Singapore, British Airways, off the top of my head, Lufthansa, they're going to be the launch customer for it. Yeah. They've not had 777s apart from freighters. So it's an interesting one. It's a very interesting one.
It is, but there has to be a competitor with a 350, hasn't there?
Yeah.
there's got to be somebody competing against Airbus with that size aircraft, hasn't there? So there will be a need for it. I would say.
That's where the 787 comes in, but maybe that's not enough plane to give to people. But it's maybe it's the mechanics of it. Maybe it's the the folded wingtips as well. Maybe it's just some airlines just think it's a bit too much faff.
Yeah, it's just
Or
an extra
too
thing
much
to go
plane,
wrong,
maybe.
isn't it? I don't know. I mean, it's a massive plane, isn't it? If you get one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
And it'll outseat a 787, won't it, every day a week? Definitely.
Yeah, it will completely outseat a 787, and the engines are going to be the biggest, because it's flying around at the moment. They are the biggest engines in the world, which are the same width, I think, as the fuselage of a 737. Which is frightening to think about because the 737.
The massive engines on a 787 anyway.
He's lost his earphones. Then we're gonna have to go
Sorry
solo.
About that. The massive engines on a 78 on a 777 anyway, aren't they? So
now
they're even bigger. But I think it's going to be down to economics, isn't it?
I think
that's what it's all going to be. I think it's going to
be I think it's going to be a case of just we'll wait and see what the future sort of holds really, and just keep an eye on like the news and just go from there. I think that's all you can do really.
Yeah, it'd be nice. I think going back to BA as well. That with all these next generation aircraft what are coming through, like your Neos and like even this 777 and what have you. It'd be nice if they put a new livery on it, wouldn't it, to match the new generation. Fingers crossed.
Chelsea Rose, baby.
Nah, of course. I can imagine them getting somebody like Tracy Emin or somebody like that to do some absolutely bizarre thing. I don't know.
You know what it'll be, didn't you? It'd be like Iberia. It'd be like red and blue instead of yellow and red.
Yeah, it'll be a big blue and red BA squashed together, sat just behind cockpit, and BA on tail as well in blue and red, and that'll be it. It's going to be a tap.
For my sake, I hope they don't, because I'm near the end of it with you. Look what they've done with this livery now.
Yeah. In my best Irish accent.
Yeah. Well, now I'd say. Rob Brown Planes Spot says, any prospect of the A220 or will City Flyer stick with Embraer? I mean, I think personally for me, I think City Flyer will probably be done in the next sort of, I don't know, let's say 10 years or so. I'd like to. I would probably guess it and say that it would probably be done. I can't see what they would. I mean, I think for the 220, they would probably go for the shorter version if they did the 100 because that works and it goes in and out of London City. I don't know if the 300 does the stretch version. I'm not entirely sure. I don't think it does. But, I mean, if they were to get rid of them and they would stay around, what would they replace the Embraers with? There's not a lot of options.
There's not a great deal, is there, really?
I mean, do they go for the E2s? Possibly. Then again, do they need them? No. Do they need City Flyer? Not really.
I don't think they do. I don't think they do either. And I agree with you, Tom. Yeah.
Get them in and out of London City. Could they have the main airline go in and out of London City and buy a smaller plane and maybe get the A220? Possibly. I don't think it's on their mind at the moment. I know they had the was it the 170s? I think it was, or the 175s. One of them. I haven't seen them around for a while, so I think they're probably out.
I think it was 175s, weren't they? Yeah.
But they've got the 190s at the moment doing the job of flying around to, for city breaks and things like that. So, I mean, yeah, if they were to get rid of them, and City Flyer sticks around, I mean, possibly. I don't know. It's a hard one because City Flyer is one of those ones you don't really hear much about, and the planes that they've got. I mean, they've been bringing in planes that are old enough anyway to already be out fleet from different airlines. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. There was a couple of Embraers that they bought in from possibly a Brazilian airline, maybe. So they weren't new; they were second-hand.
No,
But that was
second-hand
kind of
planes.
deal with like capacity and stuff. So if capacity's there, could they go for something a bit bigger like the 220? Maybe. But
I think they probably would opt for the 220 personally. I think they'd probably get a better deal, to be quite honest.
yeah,
Just with dealing with Airbus, and I think as well with these mega short haul routes like over UK and even across to like Holland and things like that, you've got that many low cost carriers doing the same kind of job. It's a saturated market as well, isn't it? So do they want to be putting tens of millions of pounds into such a saturated market? I mean, obviously they've got the football, but Flybe are coming back on. You've got Logan Air, then you've got your low cost carriers, and even people like KLM and Air France are doing the same kind of thing, flying over to this country. It's such a saturated market, and it's whether they want to. I think they'll always have a foot in it, but whether they want to invest in it, that's another story, isn't it?
The thing with KLM is that with their older Embraers, they are replacing them with the 195 E2s, which obviously they're getting quite a few of.
Yeah.
So they've got a plan in place for them. For City Flyer, I don't think. I mean, there's probably not plans to get rid of the 190s just yet, because there are quite a few of them. So it's obviously going to be part of that fleet for a while. But who's to say that in like the future, like let's say 5-10 years, that somebody don't come out with another regional jet and they go, oh, actually that's really good fit.
Yeah.
But because they've got all the the more Airbus than Boeing, don't rule it out, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Don't rule it out at all.
No.
But talking of the 220, just very quickly, did you hear during the week that the American startup Breeze want to send theirs transatlantic?
What, 220?
It can do it.
Who did it?
Do you want to know where it goes to?
Oh, Manchester. Yay!
Yeah. Yeah. So there's rumours during the week that Breeze, who are a new startup American airline, they're starting to get 220s into their fleet. And I think the CEO said that at some point they want to kind of do a JetBlue and send their 220s transatlantic to Manchester.
Wow, that'll be something, won't it?
Yeah.
God,
I mean, it can do it if Air Baltic are sending theirs from Riga to Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it was Air Baltic, weren't it? Did the long haul. That was the longest flight what's been done in a 220, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Breeze
a massive
want to kind
flight.
of do the whole the ambitious plan, basically, of
it is an ambitious plan,
trying to send theirs transatlantic and that. So it'd almost offer up like a bit like that Speedbird 001 offering.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
possibly exclusivity of who could fly it, or they offer it out to anybody and maybe do a couple of flights a day if it's viable and if it can be done.
Yeah. I think it will be if it can be done. I think it'll be a really economic flight, won't it? To be fair, because it's a small, it's a small new aircraft, and it'll be economic, won't it? So if it can be done comfortably, because it's not just getting here; it's when you get here. If it's windy or whatever, there's 2 or 3 go arounds or something, and it all adds up, doesn't it? So
that's it. Yeah, that's it. So I thought I'd point that out before.
It's something worth watching. That, definitely, that'd be really
worth having a look. There are articles about it, so it's not a made-up story.
Right.
Reminds me of a song from my childhood, actually, made up stories by a band called Go Audio. Going off a topic, why not? But
never heard of it.
Just the lyrics came into my head then as I made up stories and just started singing the song in my head. It's fine. But yeah, just last sort of ending note. Bruce Dickinson of Iron Maiden was also a pilot for Astraeus, which indeed he was, because he flew the 757 when they were using it for tour. So he was the one actually flying it around the world.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm certain he was the one that flew Ed Force One as well. I think he was. I'm sure he was. Fascinating career though. When he's not drumming and stuff, like back then he was flying around like passengers to holiday destinations and stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
You wouldn't even know it. You wouldn't even know.
No, you wouldn't, would you? No. I think Travolta's another one. He's got a 747 license, hasn't he? John Travolta. Yeah, that's another one, isn't it?
And last touching note from him as well. He said one of the A318s that we were talking about got sold to Titan, which it did.
Right.
I think it was doing some flights down to St Helena in South Africa, I think.
Oh, okay, right.
Possibly. Not sure. I don't know where it is now. But yeah. Well, we've taken a little bit of a roll back into the history of British Airways. We didn't want to sort of go from the very beginning all the way through to the, to the present day. We kind of wanted to break it up a little bit and go from when they actually merged to sort of where they're at now and what we think the future plans will be. So hopefully you've enjoyed this sort of we'll call it not a history lesson, but it's just a kind of a recap as to who British Airways are and how.
Yeah, a bit of an insight, weren't it, into the more recent history?
Yeah, insight's the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
So we're going to begin to wrap the show up, but first, I could go Robin, but I'm not going to. But first, a very sort of special announcement for next week. We're very excited for this because we sort of planned this last weekend. Did we? I think last weekend for next week's show.
Well, I think if you're going to say what you want, no. If I think you are going to say what I think you're going to say, then yes. Yeah, we have, definitely, yeah.
By the Lord,
it's just all coming back to me now. Yeah, I think I might have had several sherbets in the meantime since talking about it.
We all did, but
to be honest.
So next week,
I don't think we should mention last Friday, but that's another story.
You're not funny. I'd say you're full of crap as well, but that's not strictly true either. But no, so next week on next week's show, we are having a special guest, but not just a special guest, a special returning guest. We've been sort of umming and ahhing about this one for a while, and we feel that the time is right to welcome back. He was the very first guest on the show, and he's going to be guest number or participant number 39. So, Ger Dooley is coming back to the show next week, which we're very excited about, aren't we?
We are, yeah, definitely.
We are, it's going to be a lot of fun. He's had some very interesting stories since his sort of break away from everything, and he's going to come on to tell us all about his experience with the Antonov 225, where he went airside at Shannon and actually got to walk around and inside the Antonov 225.
Yeah, did really well there, didn't he?
Did really well to get that. So Ger Dooley will be back with us next week to talk about that and, of course, what he's been up to and everything else. So it's going to be a wild ride, but we're looking forward to it. It's going to be good to welcome him back on the show. Now, before we jump into shout-outs and everything else, when we begin to wrap the show up, if you want to follow Ian on social medias, you can follow him on Instagram at _plane_place. Definitely worth checking that out. That's all you can find him on. If you want to follow Steve, who is not here, you can follow him on Instagram at Steve_planes and on Instagram, and of course on Twitter you can follow him at TDL Steve. We'll just put that up on the screen there. Shout out to us too. He's proper passed off.
His spelling doesn't get any better, does it?
Spelling isn't great. No, I'll give him that. He can join you for this, but top job. Look forward to next week. Hopefully your internet will be better. You should probably apologise a bit more to everyone else that you've passed off.
That's quite a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. Not a lot of time to do it either.
No.
But no. So we're going to start to wrap the show up now with a few shout-outs. Normally Steve would go first, but he's given his shout-out because he's passed off. So Ian, if you'd like to take it away. Also, if you have any shout-outs, chuck them in the chat. We'll show them on the screen. Off you go.
Brilliant. Big shout-out to you, Tom, for another good show tonight. A shout-out to Steve as well, who is genuinely passed off. That he that he couldn't join us tonight. A big shout out to Rob Brown there, who's asking if there's any chutney suggestions for Christmas. Lol. Well, Rob, if you've got a local Marks and Spencers up near you, they're doing a lovely selection box with various chutneys in for this festive season. So that's always worth a shout out. Definitely, Marks and Spencers, they do a nice chutney. Come back now, Tom.
I was coming back anyway.
Yeah, thanks to Kat Burton as well for her little nuggets tonight as well. Always nice to hear from Kat, and it's nice little bits of information coming up the bottom of the screen there to help us out and what have you. I'd like to shout out Google for doing fantastic computers as well. Chromebooks are absolutely fantastic. I use one myself. Never have a problem with it. I'd like to thank Virgin for their internet, my internet provider, who never let me down either, and it's a constant, steady stream. No, and just thanks to everybody for tuning in tonight and joining in with chat and everything, and thanks to you and thanks to Steve as well for another great show. So fantastic. Over to you, Tom.
Wonderful. I shall echo what you have said. And I'd like to firstly give a shout out to Google for their excellent Chromebooks. Probably one of the best laptops / small computers you can buy on the market. Absolutely amazing. They never let you down. I'd also like to thank my internet provider for allowing me to get through tonight's show with no problems whatsoever. It might be to do with the antennas that I have on my head. Sorry, not antennas, antlers. But no. Firstly, a big thank you to everybody who has watched this evening through our little throwback sort of type of thing that we've been doing. Always appreciated, of course. Shout out to you, Ian, for stepping into Steve's boots.
Yeah. I did limp my way through it, but I think we did all right.
Your computer didn't let you down, so that's the
no. That's one thing, isn't it?
Big thumbs up to computers. Big shout out to Let's Go with Kat Burton for popping in. Nice surprise. But if you're still here, thank you very much for watching and contributing, of course. And as always, shout out to the NHS workers around the world. And I always say that they're not around the world, are they? NHS workers in the UK, and of course any health workers around the world as well, for the continued efforts that you guys are continuing to do, despite the fact that the world has gone to, it's nearly 9 o'clock, so I can say it, gone to shit.
I'll release this, Robin. Right, it's gone.
But yes, so health workers around the world for their continued effort while the world goes to shit again. And key workers, very proud of you. Super, super proud of you for the continued contribution. And of course, just because you deserve to be made a massive fuss over because of the effort and everything else that you're putting into. And we are super proud of you all. So, with that being said, and with the show possibly being
a great success,
we are probably going to leave it. I just wanted to get that one in. We're going to leave it here, and like I said, just a small reminder that next week we are joined again, we are rejoined by the returning Dooley, so do not miss that. If you have liked the stream this evening, massively new round here, do consider subscribing. We're on path to 1,000 subscribers, so if you'd like to start with that would be appreciated. So all that's left for us to say is Rob Brown saying nice one as always, have a good one. Thank you very much.
Yep, cheers, Rob.
All that's left for us to say is our goodbyes. So Ian, if you'd like to say goodbye.
Yep, thanks everybody for tuning in tonight. From me, Batman, and my little buddy Robin, because that's how I roll. Join us again next week. So goodbye, everybody.
Wonderful. And all that's left for me to say is have a fantastic rest of the week. Get your Christmas shopping done early. You only got a few weeks left
before we get locked down again.
Yes, and hopefully we will see you again next week, 7:30 p.m. for the return of Jer Dooley. So enjoy the rest of your week. Have a fantastic weekend. We will see you 7:30 p.m. next Wednesday. So for now, continue to stay safe, look after yourselves, and we'll see you next week. From myself, I'm still bitter about not making the sleigh this year, and from Santa himself, it's goodbye from us.
I'll have a word.
Thank you, everybody. See you next week. Bye.
Bye.
I'm still going to wave. Bye.
Bye.